My name is Alex. I'm 32, single, no kids, steady job in tech, living comfortably enough to treat myself to a few hobbies like photography and cooking and the occasional trip when I feel like it. But in my family's eyes, I'm not really a person. I'm not a son, a brother, or just another relative at the table. I'm the wallet, the safety net, the one who always has it together, the one who's lucky, the one who doesn't need much, the one who should always be ready to step in, cover the tab, and smooth things over. And for a long time, I believed that too. I believed that was what family does. Nah, you help each other out. If I'm doing okay, why shouldn't I make life a little easier for the people I care about? And that's what I told myself every single time I reached for my credit card. Every time I Venmoed a cousin. Every time I just helped out a little. When my sister had twins at 23, and her boyfriend bailed, I was the one who bought the diapers and baby clothes. When my cousin Jason dropped out of grad school to figure things out, which 7 years later he's still figuring out, I was the one covering his rent, month after month. When my mom called, voice soft but familiar with the ask, "Your dad's truck broke down and he needs it for work. Do you think you could just spot us until next payday?" Of course I could. And I did. No one ever said thank you. Not once. Not my sister, not my cousin, not my parents. Over time, it stopped feeling like help and started feeling like obligation, like taxes I had to pay for being child-free, for not needing as much as they did. My mom would smile at me with that gentle, almost patronizing tone and say, "You're lucky, you should share that luck." My aunt once told me, while cashing the check I wrote for her son's tuition, "It's only fair. You're doing so well." At first it was small. School supplies, gas money, chipping in for a birthday gift I didn't even agree to. But the requests kept growing, stretching into car repairs, vet bills, surprise medical expenses. It became expected, normal. They never asked, "Can you help?" They just assumed I would. And I did, because I thought that's what love looked like. Because I thought if I kept showing up for them, they'd eventually see me as more than just the guy who pays the bills. But they didn't. What I didn't realize back then was that slowly, piece by piece, I was being trained, conditioned to believe that my worth in this family was tied to what I could give, not who I was. That my love was only valuable if it came with a receipt. It wasn't about generosity anymore. It was about being taken for granted, being expected to pay admission just to belong. And I kept paying. Until one Christmas, when they crossed a line so bold I couldn't look away anymore. And that's where this story really begins. It was Christmas Eve. The house smelled like cinnamon and pine, the kids were running wild between piles of wrapping paper, and the adults sat around the table, sipping wine, laughing, making small talk about work and weather. From the outside, it looked like any other family holiday. But under the surface, I felt that familiar itch in my chest, the one I always got when I knew I didn't quite belong. I'd hosted the last 3 Christmases, bought most of the food, helped cover the decorations, pitched in for extra gifts here and there. This year, I thought maybe things would be different. I thought maybe after all the times I'd shown up for them, they'd at least cover their own share. I was wrong. Halfway through dinner, while the kids tore through piles of toys, I got a notification on my phone. At first, I thought it was a scam, a $13,642 charge on my backup credit card, but then I looked closer. Department stores, toy chains, online gift sites, all the gifts, every single one of them. My stomach dropped. I quietly pushed my chair back, glanced down at the screen again, my thumb hovering over the transaction list. No mistake. It was my card, my money, used without my permission. I swallowed hard and looked up. Who did this? The table fell quiet. The only sound was the soft crackle of the fireplace and the crinkle of wrapping paper being torn apart across the room. Dad looked up from out of his wine glass like I just asked if anyone wanted more gravy. "We voted," he said, casual as anything. "You don't have kids. The rest of us do. We thought it was only fair that you covered the gifts this year for the little ones." I stared at him, blinking, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You voted?" I repeated. "Yeah," he nodded, setting his glass down. "It just makes sense, doesn't it? You're doing well. You don't have the same expenses. So we figured..." "You figured I'd just pay without being asked?" My voice was shaking now, but I kept it low. "You always say you don't mind helping." Mom chimed in, eyes on her plate. "Helping is offering," I shot back. This was stealing. My sister Rachel didn't even look up from her wine as her twins ripped open the Lego sets I'd apparently bought them. My cousin Jeff gave me a sheepish shrug, that weak, useless gesture that said, I know this is messed up, but I'm not about to say anything. Dad waved his hand like he was shooing a fly. Don't get so bent out of shape. It's just money. You've got plenty. I could barely hear him pounding in my ears. I looked around that table. 12 people, half of whom hadn't spoken to me all year unless it was to ask for something. The other half actively mocking me behind my back for being single, for not having a real family of my own. You're unbelievable, I whispered, pushing back my chair. Sit down, my cousin snapped. Don't ruin the mood. The kids are having a good time. Oh, don't worry, I said, standing now, grabbing my phone off the table. I'm not going to ruin the mood. I'm going to end the show. Dad smirked. What's that supposed to mean? I met his eyes. It means you're going to love what comes next. He actually laughed. Laughed like I was bluffing, like I'd always bluff. Like I'd roll over the way I always had. He didn't laugh the next day, because the next day, after a sleepless night of replaying every word, every shrug, every smug smile, I made the call to my bank, filed the fraud report, started the chargebacks, froze the emergency card, the one I'd given my mom years ago, just in case. The one they had apparently passed around like a party favor. By the time they realized I wasn't bluffing, the wheels were already in motion. Transactions reversed, orders canceled, refunds in progress. And that's when my phone blew up. 53 missed calls, cousins screaming, mom sobbing, Dad's voice shaking on the voicemail. Please, for the love of God, don't do this. But it was already done. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt awake. I felt free. The silence didn't last long. My phone was dead quiet for about half a day. Just enough time for them to realize that I wasn't bluffing. Then came the flood. First, the texts. Hey, maybe we should talk like adults. Your mom's been sick with stress. Are you happy now? The kids are asking why Uncle Ghost doesn't call anymore. Every message was carefully crafted to sound concerned, but I knew exactly what it was. Guilt, manipulation, the same old playbook they'd used on me my whole life. They didn't miss me. They missed what I provided. I didn't respond. Not to a single one. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. 3 days after Christmas, I came home from work, exhausted, ready to collapse on the couch and enjoy my silence, only to find them standing on my front porch. My mom, Dad, and my sister Rachel, arms crossed, eyes hard, like they were staging an intervention. Rachel's face was twisted into something between disgust and entitlement, like chewing on battery acid. Can we talk? Mom asked, voice quivering just enough to sell the performance. I crossed my arms, leaning on the doorframe. Say what you came to say. Mom jumped in immediately. We didn't mean for it to happen like this. We just thought... What? That I'd roll over like I always do. Smile and say, sure, go ahead, rob me blind, but let's keep the holiday spirit alive? I cut her off, my voice sharp. Dad stepped forward like the reasonable one trying to play mediator. Son, let's not turn this into some kind of war. We're family. I let out a laugh, loud, bitter. War? You declared war when you stole from me and called it a vote. That wasn't family, that was betrayal. Rachel rolled her eyes so hard I thought they might fall out of her head. Oh my God, are you still on about that? You're acting like we drained your entire life savings. I stepped closer. My hands are steady now. I paid for your car last summer, Rachel. Remember? The down payment you promised you'd repay after you got back on your feet? Funny how quick you forget. She scoffed. You make 6 figures, you'll survive. And there it was. The truth. Plain as day. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a walking ATM with a soft spot. That right there, I said, my voice calm but cutting, is exactly why this ends now. You treat me like I'm just a wallet that occasionally shows up at Christmas with a casserole. Mom's eyes welled up with tears on cue. We were just trying to make sure the kids had a good Christmas. So, you steal from me? I asked, staring at her down. Dad's face darkened and his tone shifted, less apologetic, more threatening. Enough. This has gone too far. You need to fix this. Undo the chargebacks. Right now. I held his gaze and didn't say a word. That's when he played their favorite card. Public shame. Think about how this looks, Alex, Dad growled. What do you want people to say? That you betrayed your own family over a few toys? I didn't blink. I want people to say that I finally grew a spine. And then I said the sentence that made my mom gasp, made Rachel's face flush red with rage, and turned my dad's expression into stone. I'm done with all of you. I've already blocked your numbers. And as of this weekend, I'm moving to another state, alone. The silence that followed was beautiful, heavy, weighted with the realization that they had finally pushed me too far. I opened my front door, looked them all dead in the eye, and said, "Now get off my porch." They didn't move at first, they just stood there, and stunned, blinking like I had spoken in a foreign language, like they couldn't comprehend that their golden goose had finally flown the coop. But eventually they turned and left. Rachel stormed off first, stomping down the walkway like a child denied dessert. Dad followed, muttering under his breath. Mom was last, glancing back over her shoulder like maybe if she looked pitiful enough I'd cave. But I didn't. I shut the door, locked it, and leaned my back against the wood. For the first time in my life, the weight was gone. No more guilt, no more games, no more being the family piggy bank. Just silence. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. The first 48 hours after I shut that door were blissfully quiet. No calls, no texts, no guilt-laced voicemails. Just the hum of my apartment, the soft buzz of the heater, the clink of a spoon in my coffee mug. It was the first time I could remember in years that my phone wasn't lighting up with emergencies that weren't mine. I sat on my floor, cross-legged, a Spotify playlist humming in the background. There were no bills waiting for me to pay. No sudden Venmo requests for just a little help. No panic texts about forgotten birthdays or late rent notices. There was just me, my peace and the quiet. But I knew my family. They weren't going to let go of their favorite donor without a fight. By day 3, the silence cracked. The messages started again, this time heavier, sharper, laced with the language they knew best. Guilt, manipulation, and emotional blackmail. Maybe we should talk like adults. Your mom's been sick with stress. Are you happy now? The kids are asking why Uncle Ghost doesn't call anymore. It was textbook. Not one message said, "We're sorry." Not one of them asked how I was doing. No one admitted what they had done. Instead, they focused on my reaction, painting me as the villain, the one who ruined Christmas, the selfish child who abandoned their struggling family. I didn't respond, not a word, because I finally understood something that had taken me far too long to learn. Their love came with conditions. And the biggest condition was my silence. But they didn't stop there. The real escalation came when my cousin Jason, the same Jason who'd been figuring things out for the better part of a decade on my dime, showed up at my door, dressed up, hair brushed, clean blazer, watch on his wrist like he was trying to cosplay as responsible. "I just want to talk," he said, standing on my front step, hands out like a peace offering. I crossed my arms. "About what?" He shuffled his feet. "Look, I know things got out of hand. I know what they did was wrong. I wanted to tell you I'm changing. I enrolled in some online courses, marketing, I'm working with a friend, I'm getting it together." For a second I wanted to believe him. I really did. I wanted to believe that maybe, someone in my family was finally ready to own up, to take responsibility for their choices. But there was this little voice in the back of my head, the one that had been quiet for too long, and now was screaming, "Be careful!" So I asked, blunt as ever, "Are you here for money?" Jason's eyes widened. No, I'm not here for that. I just wanted to say, I'm not your shadow anymore. I'm done taking. It almost worked. Almost. But 30 minutes after you left, I got an alert from my bank. Someone was trying to reset access to my online account. Guess who? Jason. The same Jason who'd stood on my porch, swearing he wasn't here for the money, swearing he was different. His apology was just another hustle. Another act. I locked down every password, froze the emergency backup card, alerted my bank's fraud team again. And in that moment, something solidified in me, a boundary I would never again let them cross. That was the last attempt anyone from my family made to get close. And as the days turned into weeks, the space between us became permanent. No more calls, no more texts, just the echo of my decision ringing clear. Enough was enough. The fallout wasn't easy. It never is when you set boundaries where there have never been any before. People don't like it when the free ride ends. They don't applaud when you grow a spine. They lash out. They scramble to flip the narrative, to solve the problem, but they can only play the game if you sit at the table. And I had finally walk away. After I shut the door on my family, literally and figuratively, the air felt different, lighter, cleaner. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel tethered to anyone else's chaos. There were no fires to put out, no last-minute Venmo requests disguised as emergencies, no passive-aggressive guilt trips about not showing up for family. What there was space. And in that space, I could finally breathe. I won't lie to you, there were moments when doubt crept in. Years of conditioning don't just peel off in a day. Somewhere deep down, I kept hearing their words. Family takes care of each other. You're being selfish. You're overreacting. But then, right on time, the text would roll in. Your mom's been crying non-stop. This is killing her. The kids are asking why Uncle Alex doesn't love them anymore. Fine. If you want to ruin your relationship with all of us, that's on you. And just like that, the doubt burned away. Because none of those messages said, we're sorry. None of them said, what we did was wrong. Every word was about how my reaction was the real offense. Not their betrayal, not their theft, not their manipulation. It was always easier for them to make me the bad guy than to face their own actions. But the longer the silence stretched, the clearer my mind became. I started asking myself the question I should have asked years ago. What do I want my life to look like if I stop carrying everyone else's baggage? I knew the answer before I could even finish asking. I wanted peace. I wanted autonomy. I wanted to live without the constant expectation that my worth was tied to how much I gave, financially, emotionally, physically. So I made the decision to change everything. I ended my lease, packed my apartment into a rented truck, and accepted a job offer in another state. Higher pay, better role, new city, clean slate. Best of all, not a single relative within a 400-mile radius. The morning I left, I stood in my empty apartment, the last box sealed and stacked near the door. I took one long look around, felt my chest rise and fall with the calmest breath I had had in years, and smiled. No more emergencies that weren't mine. No more guilt-tripping calls from family. No more paying for a seat at a table where I was never truly welcome. Freedom tasted like fresh coffee on the open road, music blasting from the speakers, my car loaded with boxes, my dog riding shotgun, the one creature in my life who never asked for more than love and walks and the occasional treat. There was no sadness in the rearview mirror, only relief. But here's the thing about escaping toxic dynamics. People rarely let go without a last desperate reach. The voicemails kept coming for a while. Unknown numbers, blocked accounts. Even a burner Instagram message that reads, "Come home, we're family, enough is enough." But I'd already said my enough. And for the first time, I meant it. I wasn't running away from my family, I was running toward myself. It took me 32 years to realize that saying no wasn't cruel, it was necessary. Boundaries weren't betrayal, they were survival. Choosing freedom over obligation isn't easy. It costs you the illusion of belonging. But what you gain in return is something they can never take from you again. Your peace, your self-respect, your life on your own terms. And I was finally, gloriously living mine. When the dust settled and the calls stopped coming, or at least stopped getting through, I found myself in a strange, unfamiliar place. Silence. But instead of feeling empty, it felt spacious. Like I'd finally cleared out the noise that had been crowding my life for so long. It's funny how quiet the world becomes when the only voices left are your own. I moved into a small apartment downtown, nothing flashy. One bedroom, big windows, and a balcony just wide enough for a chair and a tiny table, but it was mine, fully mine. Every dish in the cupboard was something I chose. Every piece of furniture was there because I wanted it, not because it was practical or on sale or came from someone who didn't need it anymore. I didn't have to budget around someone else's overdue bills or plan my week around someone else's crisis. For the first time in my adult life, my paycheck was for me. My time was for me. The first thing I did after settling in was adopt a dog, a rescue mutt with scruffy fur and eyes that said, "I know what it feels like to be overlooked." I named her Balance. She became my shadow, my co-pilot, my daily reminder that love doesn't have to come with strings attached. I also started therapy. It wasn't easy at first, sitting across from someone who kept asking, "But how did that make you feel?" when I'd spent decades learning how to shut those feelings down. But my therapist didn't flinch. She listened, and when I laid it all out, the money, the manipulation, the gaslighting, the guilt trips, she gave me a sentence that stuck like glue. "You were taught that love is something you earn by sacrificing yourself." That hit hard, because it was true. Somewhere along the way, I internalized the idea that my worth was measured by how much I gave, that if I just helped a little more, paid a little more, showed up a little more, then maybe, just maybe, I'd finally be accepted, respected, loved. But the truth is, real love doesn't come with invoices attached. I started untangling the knots they'd tied in my mind. I stopped apologizing for my boundaries. I stopped explaining my choices to people who had proven they didn't care about the answers. And in that space, I began to rediscover myself. I picked up hobbies I'd put aside for years. Photography, which I hadn't touched since college. Cooking, not because I had to feed someone else, but because I enjoyed it. I joined a local hiking group. I made friends, real friends, who never asked me to cover their rent, never expected me to bankroll their lives. Friends who liked me for me. Work got better, too. Turns out, when you're not emotionally drained from being everyone's emergency fund, you have energy for your own goals. I crushed my quarterly targets, earned a promotion, and for the first time I traveled for fun. Not out of obligation, but the most healing thing I did. I stopped defending my choice to walk away. Anytime someone asked, "What about your family? Don't you miss them?" I stopped giving the long, uncomfortable explanation. I simply said, I had to choose peace, and that was enough. Because here's what I learned. People who truly love you don't force you to bleed for their comfort. They don't punish you for setting limits. They don't confuse control with care. Walking away wasn't about punishing my family. It wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to stay trapped in a role they wrote for me without my consent. I wasn't their wallet. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their emotional punching bag. I was Alex, a person with dreams, needs, limits, and worth, with or without their approval. And piece by piece, day by day, I rebuilt my life on my terms. Not perfect, not polished, but real. Finally real. I thought the story ended when I blocked their numbers, packed my car, and drove away. I thought moving to a new city, changing my phone, and leaving that toxic web behind would be the final chapter. But healing, I've learned, doesn't always stick to the script you write for it. A few months after I settled into my new life, a message found its way through. Not from a number I recognized, but from Kelly, Jason's now ex-wife. "I wanted you to know I left him. You were right. I just couldn't see it back then. Thank you for showing me the cracks." I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to keep my wall high. But another part of me felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because I needed her to validate my choices, but because maybe my decision to finally stand up for myself had helped someone else do the same. And then came the real curveball. 6 months after I cut ties on a random Thursday afternoon, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address on the envelope, but I knew the handwriting immediately. My dad. The letter wasn't long. No excuses, no gaslighting, no demands. Just this. I can't undo the damage. I know that now, but I'm sorry, truly. I was wrong to let it happen, to laugh, to call it fair. You deserve better from us, from me. If you ever want to talk, I'll be here, and if you don't, I'll understand. I read it twice, then a third time. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel anger. I felt tired. But not the crushing exhaustion they used to put on me. It was the soft, clean tiredness that comes after a long journey, the kind that tells you you've made it. I didn't write back right away. I gave myself time to sit with the letter to decide whether forgiveness was something I could give without compromising my peace. Because here's the thing, they never tell you about forgiveness. It's not for them, it's for you. It doesn't mean what they did was okay. It doesn't mean you go back. It doesn't mean you forget. It means you release yourself from carrying anger like a backpack full of bricks. You set it down. You choose lightness over bitterness. And I did. One evening, months later, I sent my dad a postcard, not a letter. Not a long, emotional reply. Just a small card with one line. I hope you're working on yourself. I am too. No return address, no invitation. But a signal, maybe, that the door wasn't locked. Just closed for now. The rest of the family? I never heard from most of them again. Some tried once or twice through burner accounts or distant relatives, but I stayed firm. The door to my peace wasn't open to people who still thought my worth was tied to my wallet, but I didn't hate them, not anymore. Because hate is just another kind of chain, and I wasn't wearing chains these days. What surprised me the most wasn't how good the distance felt. It was what I learned in the silence. I learned that love without respect is just manipulation in prettier packaging. I learned that giving doesn't have to mean losing yourself. I learned that family isn't defined by shared blood, but by shared care. I learned that no can be the most loving word you'll ever speak, to others and to yourself. And most importantly, I learned that walking away isn't always about leaving others behind. Sometimes it's about walking toward yourself for the very first time. So when people ask me now, "How's your family?" I smile softly and say, "I'm finally part of one where I belong." Sometimes that family is you, and that's enough.